Wow, time flies by. It is August 13th, 4:30 p.m. I am 30 minutes late to my own meetup game. Not ideal. Packing, moving, everything is getting insane. Leaving Arizona, moving to Dallas in T-minus 5 days. Anyway, I'm here to play some 2-3 1,000 max buy-in here at Lone Butte and going to play against my friends and some fans of the vlog. It's gonna be a nice time. Anyway, I'll see you guys inside.
This vlog is a very special one as it's my last farewell meetup game at my home casino, Lone Butte, as an Arizona resident. I am moving to Dallas, Texas. I want to give a quick heartfelt thank you to Lone Butte and Gila River Hotels and Casinos. They have been nothing but amazing and supportive. I appreciate you guys letting me come film my vlogs and showcase your amazing poker room. If you guys visit Arizona, you have to check out Lone Butte. It has a friendly atmosphere and the action is great. Although I'm leaving Arizona, I'm sure I'll be back to do some meetup games at Lone Butte in the future. I don't want to give away too much in this vlog, but this one is a doozy, you guys. This was one of the craziest, amazing sessions I've ever had in my life, and I can't wait to get into some poker hands. So at this meetup game, we got 5 tables running, so what happens is I spend an hour at each table, and I'm about to take you guys on that journey. Let's play some poker. On my very first table, in one of my very first hands, I play a hand against my friend Andrew. I featured my friends Andrew and Stephanie, who are playing at this table right now with me, in one of my most recent Lone Butte vlogs where we played some 1-2 no limit action together at Lone Butte. Check that vlog out if you haven't, it was a fun one. There's a limp under the gun and under the gun 1. It folds around to Andrew in the cutoff and he raises to $20. I'm on the button and look down at King 10 of spades. I decide to flat and we end up going heads up to a flop. The flop is Queen 9-3 with 2 clubs. We flop ourselves a gutter and 1 overcard. If you watch my previous vlogs, you know that Andrew is a very tough player. He is a crusher at these stakes and I definitely have to keep my eye on him. Andrew bets $15 on this flop and I'm gonna peel here, so we head to a turn card. The turn is an 8. He bets $25 again. He's out of position, I have position, and I block the nuts. I unblock flush draws. We have king high, so it's probably not good. So I thought this was a good time and a good hand to turn into a bluff. I decide on a raise size of $85. He thinks for a while and then folds and told me he folded a queen. So in my very first hand, we get the bluff through against Andrew. In the very next hand I'm dealt, there's a straddle on the button, it folds around to under the gun and she raises to $20. A player in early position then 3 bets to 65. It folds around to me in the cutoff and I look down at ace-king offsuit. Wasn't quite sure what the best play would be here, so I decided to flat and hopefully get heads up against a 3-better. Sure enough, the under the gun player folds, so we do go heads up in a 3-bet pot. The flop comes King 9-9 2 spades. I'm thinking this is a great flop for my hand. The 3-better continuation bets for $100. I make the call and we head to a turn card. The turn is the 10 of clubs. My opponent doesn't slow down, he continues betting and he bets $250. At this point, even though I have top pair, top kicker, I'm really hating this spot as he's probably pretty strong here. It feels a lot like pocket aces. In these games, players just don't 3-bet light. I don't know much about this opponent, but I perceive him to be a somewhat tight, aggressive player. As I'm thinking, I actually say out loud to my friends next to me, am I getting coolered here? I'm not sure how you'd play a hand like ace-queen suited or pocket queens in this spot, maybe even pocket jacks as well, so I decide to call and I'm not really loving it. The river is a miracle card. If I was behind, it's an offsuit king. He has to check this card now. This is a terrible card for him. Sure enough, he does check, and I pretend to think for a little bit, but we all know what I'm gonna do. He has a little over $300 behind, and there's no other option for me except all in, so eventually I do say all in. My opponent thinks for a little bit and then folds and tells my friend Andrew that he indeed did have pocket aces, so we get the suck out there and end up scooping a very, very nice pot and our second hand here at the meetup game. In this hand, I didn't capture the beginning because I was still writing notes on the previous hand. This hand happened right after the ace-king hand. I believe there was a limp and I raised to $15 with king-queen of clubs. My friend Tyler, who's also a vlogger, he 3-bets, I believe, to around $55. I'm not gonna fold king-queen of clubs in position, so I make the call. We go heads up to a flop of queen 10-8 rainbow. Tyler continues betting into me out of position and he bets $65. I think the best play here is to make the call. We want to keep all worse hands in and this board is pretty dynamic. I would raise in this spot with my sets and 2 pairs, and some of my bluffs would be gut shots. My hand falls right in the middle of a pure call because of the nature of this board. The board is so dynamic because there's so many turn cards that can drastically change the action. We head to a turn card which is kind of interesting. It's the ace of clubs. Now I have second pair, the nut flush draw, and a gut shot straight draw. He bets $115. My hand is way too strong to fold and we have so much equity, we want to keep worse hands in, and as the 3-better out of position, the ace is actually a really good card for him, so there's a chance I am now behind. So I decide to flat and we head to a river card. The river is the Jack of Hearts. I was so focused on hitting my flush draw at first, I didn't realize I did hit the absolute nut straight on the river. It took me a second to realize it, but once I did, Tyler had checked to me, and I think for a little bit, Tyler has about $300 behind, so this is an easy all-in situation. These first couple hands have been pretty easy decisions so far, and we keep getting there, and I am on fire. He puts in the call and shows ace jack offsuit, so unfortunately for him, he rivers 2 pair, but my straight takes the pot and we are blazing here starting this meetup game. In this hand, there's an under the gun raise to $15, middle position calls, and I look down at pocket 10s in the small blind and elect to flat. We go 3 ways to a flop of, you guessed it, 10, 9, deuce, rainbow. We flop top set and continue our heater. I check it to the under the gun raiser, hoping he puts in a bet so I can raise this board, but unfortunately the flop checks around. The turn is a pretty dynamic card. It's the 8 of diamonds. I imagine if the under the gun raiser had queen jack suited here, he would have certainly c-bet the flop, so I'm really only worried about the middle position raiser hitting this card. But we do have a set, I gotta put some money in the pot, so I bet $25. The under the gun player calls and the middle position player folds, so now I'm pretty confident that I'm way ahead of the under the gun player. The river is a 4 of diamonds, so it does bring in the diamond flush. On cards like this and on boards that I don't necessarily have the nuts on, but I'm very high up in my range, I like to check and hope that they take a stab at this. I don't think he can have much, and I want to give him some room to bluff, so I do check. And sure enough, he puts a bet together of $45. I snap call before he can even finish putting out his bet, and then he grabbed the stack he put out and put it on my stack, and he said, nice hand, so I assume he didn't have anything, and we continue our heater here. In this hand, I get the option of raising my button, which is a rarity as it folds around to me, and I look down at king 9 offsuit. I decide to raise to 15, my friend Stephanie calls in the small blind and the big blind calls as well, so we go 3 ways to a flop. Flop is queen 10-7 rainbow. They check it over to me and I made a joke and said I don't know what to do here, so I check. The turn is the 4 of clubs. Stephanie leads for $15, the big blind calls, and with how hot I'm running, I'm gonna peel here with my gutter and 1 overcard, so we head to a river, which is, you guessed it, none other than the Jack of Hearts. So now I make a straight on the river. Stephanie checks, the big blind bets $50 into this pot, so this is almost a pot-sized bet. I really hope he has 2 pair, maybe even a pair of queens, something he can call me with, but I'm definitely gonna raise, and I make it $150. Stephanie folds and then my opponent thinks for a little bit and then flicks in the call, and I show him the bad news. He had Jack 4 suited, so he backed into 2 pair, and once again I am running like absolute god here at this meetup game, and we pick up another chunky pot. In the hand right before this one, I picked up a small pot flopping top pair with queen 10 of diamonds, so I was still writing the notes from that hand before hitting record for this one. So in this hand, I'm in middle position with king king queen offsuit, and I raised to $20. The small blind and big blind call, so we go 3 ways to a flop. We continue our run good here as the flop comes king 6-9 rainbow, so we flop top pair with a queen kicker. The small blind checks and the big blind decides to start leading and bets $20. While I can certainly raise here, a lead out of position usually is a lot of weakness, especially in these lower stakes games, so let's keep all worse hands in and make the call in position. The small blind folds, so we go heads up to a turn, which is the 10 of hearts. He doesn't slow down, he continues betting, and he bets $30. I make the call yet again. We head to a river card, which is the 8 of clubs. He bets yet again, and he bets $60 this time. I don't love it at this point, but I'm not folding my top pair here against this opponent, so I put in the call and he says, "You got it," throws his hand into the muck, and we scoop yet another pot. In this hand, my phone ran out of storage, so I thought this hand didn't record, so therefore I didn't take notes and totally forget what happened, but all I know is I won another $250 or so rivering a king high flush. As you're watching this vlog, I have already moved to Dallas, Texas, and one of the first things on my list is I'm doing a meetup game September 1st through 4th at Georgetown Poker Club in Georgetown, Texas. We're going to be doing a few live streams, meetup games, and a tag team tournament, so come out and hang out with me in Georgetown.
All right, taking a quick break here. I am running hot in this meetup game. I have played 2 tables so far. I don't even know how much I'm up, but it's a lot for this game. And now I'm headed to table 3. Let's do it.
My friend Kyrie limps in the hijack. I'm in the cutoff and look down at 5-6 of diamonds as I'm still unstacking my chips from the last table, and I raise to $15. The small blind puts in the 3-bet and makes it $50. Kyrie calls, and I didn't come all this way to fold suited connectors at my meetup game, so I put in the call and we go 3 ways to a flop of 10, 4, deuce with 2 diamonds. So we flop ourselves a flush draw and a gut shot to a straight. The original raiser checks and my friend Kyrie decides to bet $65. I know quite a bit about Kyrie's tendencies, so I'm going to just make the call here and hopefully get heads up heading to a turn. Luckily, the small blind who 3-bet does put in the fold, which I was kind of surprised to see, so we head to a turn card. The turn is the deuce of spades, so now the board is paired. He checks, and I decide to check back as well. It's going to be hard for me to get him to fold any of his pairs, and possibly even some ace highs at this point, so I decide to check and see what develops on the river. The river is the queen of spades, and Kyrie checks again. I think he's going to be giving up a lot when he checks the turn and the river. I have 6 high, so I can't win if I check, so that's good enough reason for us to put in a bet, so I put in a bet of $125, pretty confident that Kyrie is going to make the fold, and sure enough, he folds pretty quickly, so luckily we get one through there. In this hand, I play a pot against a very interesting player who I end up playing one of the craziest hands I've ever played later on in the session. He also drove a couple hours to make it to the meetup game, so thank you so much for showing up. It was a pleasure playing with you. My opponent raises under the gun to $12. There's a caller in middle position, and then it folds to me, and I look down at pocket kings on the button. Being in position, I don't need to make it too big here, so I decide on a size of $35. It folds to the original under the gun raiser, and he puts in the 4-bet and makes it $110. I don't know much about my opponent, but this is one of the rare times that I decide to flat the 4-bet with kings being on the button, in position, and we are over 2,000 effective. So let's take it to the streets. The flop is queen 7-7 with 2 hearts. My opponent makes a standard down bet of $80. While I can certainly raise here, I'm either way ahead or way behind. So I decide to call and keep all of his bluffs in and head to a turn card and play this a bit deceptively. The turn is, I'm not sure, I forgot to write it down, but I think it was a very inconsequential card, like a 5. My opponent doesn't slow down, he bets $210. Again, not knowing a lot about my opponent, some people just have aces in this spot, and others can have bluffs, so once again, let's keep all worse hands in and head to a river card. The river is the deuce of hearts, so it does bring in the flush. My opponent thinks for quite a while before finally deciding on a check. At this point, while I can probably get value from some worse hands, I'll just be happy to check this one back and hopefully win the pot, especially after the flush comes in. So I do in fact check, and my opponent says those wonderful words, "You're good," and he tosses his cards into the muck and I scoop another very, very nice pot. Alright guys, buckle up. This is one of the weirdest and craziest hands I think I've ever played. Poker Room was doing $100 splash pots and our table got called, so now in this hand there's already $100 of dead money in the middle. And of course, one of the players decides to straddle under the gun, so now it's $6 to go. Under the gun straddles, under the gun 1 makes the call. The same player who drove quite a ways to be at the meetup game, he raises to 25. Button calls, and I look down at Jack 3 of clubs in the small blind. Am I ever calling this hand in any other situation? Of course not. But there's a lot of money in there, let's see a flop. I make the call and the big blind calls, so we go 4 ways to a flop. The flop is 8, 4, 5 with 2 clubs. The original raiser bets $50, the button calls the 50, and well, I have my flush draw and my backdoor straight draw, so I make the call as well and we head to a turn card. The turn is the beautiful, magical Queen of Clubs, so now we have a flush. I check, and now the original raiser checks, and this is where it gets interesting. The button bets $215. Hindsight is 20/20, but in this spot, I decided to make the call, and the original raiser also makes the call, so now we're going 3 ways to a river, and we have a jack high flush. The river is a complete and total blank. I check, the original raiser checks, and the button thinks and then puts a bet together to the tune of $775. This is the biggest river bet I've ever faced in my poker career, but I'm not scared of putting in a call here. The issue I have is the button is a pretty tight, aggressive player. I've seen him play a couple times, and every time he bet big on the river, he had the nuts. Now that doesn't deter from the fact that I do have a jack high flush, but this player is also smart enough to know that one of his opponents is very likely to have a flush after calling his bet on the turn. So when a player in a 2-3 player pool bets this big on the river into multiple opponents, knowing there's a high likelihood that one of us could have a flush, this just screams the nuts to me. He either has an ace high or a king high flush, and he is going for max value against probably a lower flush. I was absolutely sick to see this bet size, anything smaller, and I was just happy to pay it off. This bet just seemed so strong. I agonized for quite a while and then finally decided that he's just gonna show up with the nuts here so often against me, especially this player type, so I put in the fold. Now this is where it gets crazy. The original raiser in the hand looks at me and says, "You were supposed to call." And then he sits there agonizing and agonizing. He thinks and thinks, then he grabs a giant stack of green chips. He closes his eyes and throws it in. The button flips over the ace of clubs, and I was pretty sure I was gonna see another club to go along with it, but it was the 10 of spades. The original raiser then flips over 3-4 offsuit for just a pair of 4s. This was one of the sickest calls I've personally been a part of at the table, and props to the player on the button for trying to get that through with the nut flush blocker. It was a really good bet and it got me off the best hand, but the true props in this hand I guess goes to the player who calls with bottom pair, a pair of 4s, sniffed out the bluff, and won a massive pot. Of course, I was so sad to see that I would have won a huge pot and broke my record for the biggest win of my poker career, But I talked to a few of my friends who play against this guy almost every day, and they said they're shocked that he did that. He doesn't usually bluff like that on the river, so he definitely got me good. While I hate that I lost the hand, I don't hate my fold there, as there's so many times I've called in those spots and I'm just shown the nuts at these stakes. If I'm playing in a different game or a game with some very, very tough players, I probably don't think that hard and just toss in the call, and if they're cooler me, then they cooler me. I tried to make a good laydown and it did not work out this time. In this hand, the button straddle is on, and my buddy Kurt raises an early position to $15. I'm in the cutoff and look down at 7-5 of hearts. I decide to peel. The button straddle also comes along, so we go 3 ways to a flop. The flop is King 6-3 with 1 heart. Kurt bets $10. I have 7 high, a backdoor heart draw, and a gut shot to the straight, otherwise known as the bottom of my range. So let's try to win this pot right now, or if we get called, we can put max pressure moving forward, so I raise to $35. The button really doesn't want to fold, but he finally tosses his cards in, and Kurt doesn't think very long before putting in the fold, so we get our little 7 high bluff through. Alright, this was the last interesting pot I played for the night, and in this hand, yours truly puts on the button straddle. The small blind limps and my buddy Kurt limps in middle position, and I look down at pocket queens on my straddle. I raise to $25. The small blind really wants to call, but he ends up putting in the fold, and Kurt makes the call, so we go heads up to a flop of Jack 6-3 rainbow. Kurt checks it over to me, and this is a very disconnected and dry flop. I don't need to bet too big on this board with my entire range, so I'm going to put in the down bet and I make it $15. Kurt makes the call. The turn is a 9 of clubs. Kurt checks it over to me once again. This card does bring some possibilities to my opponent, so I need to start sizing up because I'm at the top of my range with my overpair, and I bet $55. Kurt makes the call yet again. The river is the king of clubs. So now a backdoor club flush comes in. He checks, and while I can probably go for some thin value here, but against this particular opponent, I don't think I'm going to get called by much worse, and I'm happy to get to showdown at this point, so I check. He flips over 6-7, and I end up flipping over my hand and scooping one of the last pots of this historic night here for me at Lone Butte.
All right, down to the last table of the night here. We had, I think, 5 tables running, which is so awesome. I love Lone Butte. I'm gonna miss the staff and the dealers and everybody here so much. So guys, we've been sun running this entire day. Besides folding that jack high flush, which I talked to a lot of my friends who'd played with that guy before, and they said, honestly, against him, it's a pretty good fold. Just a little unfortunate he decided to go for that bluff, but props to him because that bluff was great. Very, very good bluff there. Anyway, all right, last table of the night, and then it's time to go home and do some more packing. See you guys back inside. All right, meetup game complete, mission accomplished. So I was in the game for $1,000, cashed out with $28.20 for my official largest cash out in profit I've ever had. So I'm happy, couldn't be more thankful and grateful for this opportunity, and what a blast. Amazing seeing all my friends here and fans of the vlog, and it was a blast. I had so much fun, and of course helps to book a nice profit. So anyway, if you guys enjoyed the vlog, would you do me a huge favor and go all in and like, comment, and subscribe? It would mean the world to me. We're just getting started, and remember guys, it's only up from here. Next stop, Dallas, Texas.